Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Matt Tate, the CEO of MANTECH. Matt, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Tom. I'm glad to be here.
And it's an interesting time to be talking because there's been some fundamental changes at MANTECH itself, which we'll get into, but also the industry is really interesting, let's put it that way right now. The federal market, the aerospace market, the military market, so much morphing going on, a lot of uncertainty. And probably one of the most important things any company can do right now is distinguish itself from competitors of equal size or larger size. So let's talk about MANTECH. That's our topic today. Yeah. How do you distinguish yourselves from some of the larger competitors and from maybe companies that might be roughly the same size?
Yeah, so Tom, great question, obviously. And I think, look, for MANTECH, we have mission depth, we're people first, and innovation always. And what do I mean by that, right? Because we're a high-tech, high-end engineering company. We see ourselves as the leader in cyber and AI for mission-focused technologies within our industry. And I'll give you an example with cyber. We've been around for decades. I mean, we were literally doing cyber before it was called cyber. But we're also involved in every single national security headline, as well as some headlines people don't see, right, because some of the work that we do. And I think that gets to the first point, really, to answer your question, which is, I think culture, right, is the first thing around what defines us, and what do I mean by that? Look, I wake up every morning wondering what's best for our country, and I want our teams and people to do that as well. And I think that's part of the reason why, for the size of our company, we're close to half veteran. And that's very unusual in our industry. And I think it's because we put country first, right? And that's what we're going to do, right? We're going to protect our democratic values, keep our country safe and strong, and we're going to do things actually other companies don't do. But I think that's unique in our industry. So I think that all helps together, in terms of culture. The second thing is, I think that we have a unique career experience and enablement process within MANTECH. And when we talk about that, I kind of say like up, right, left, or up, down, left, right. And so for up, down, left, right, I actually talk about, we have technical subject matter experts that, let's say they want to go be a manager for a year or two. And after that, maybe they don't like that, right? Because not everybody does. And they come back and say, you know what, I'd rather go back and be that technical subject matter expert. For us, that's completely fine, right? Mm-hmm. We will allow people to move up and down, left, right. We want them to use their capabilities to the best means possible to get that mission outcome that we're looking for with our clients.
Right, there's nothing worse than losing a good engineer and getting a bad manager.
Exactly.
And on that point of innovation in artificial intelligence, that's a field that is like going crazy right now. And you've got the prime, let's say, suppliers of the AI, the large search engine, the large chat engines and so forth, and the large, I call them the prime providers of the basics.
Yeah, the frontier.
And they're
providers.
all spending billions and billions and billions hiring people, and trying to put together big teams. But for users and deliverers of AI, where does the innovation lie? What are you trying to do in AI? You're not OpenAI.ai, you're MANTECH.
That's right. And so for us, there's a couple things around this, but the first one is, Tom, I'm in a lot of client conversations, and I'll just this is not exactly what they say, but this is the way it comes across, which is, hey, can I have 5 pounds of AI? Right? And my answer to them always is, we have a data and AI practice. And so for us, what I want us to do is let's talk about your data and then the outcomes you're trying to achieve. Because a lot of times we're like, look, do you want a neural network? Do you want machine learning? Do you want AI? Or do you want automation? We have something that's called our turbocharger methodology. And that actually we've seen to be very differentiated in the market to help people figure out, what are you trying to do with your data? And then how do you really get to those outcomes? Because at the end of the day, that's what it is, right? People might be enamored by that term. Mm-hmm. But then for us, look, we use every single type of capability that's out there commercially available. We have relationships and we use them to help solve those tough problems.
It's almost like those major suppliers of the AI are producing, musical instruments, but everyone else has to learn to play them.
Yes, that's right. And because of all the experience that we had, that mission depth I talked about before, we've got people that can help bring that AI capability, and we've done that in federal, civilian, intel, and defense places to go, I'll say, make our clients be successful using that type of capability.
So then there's a process of almost educating the clients to make sure that they understand why they want AI and not just, we've heard about AI, let's have it.
You know what, I think you're spot on there, Tom, but it also, what we're talking about with our clients a lot is that it's not necessarily just about AI. So we have a data and AI practice, we have a cognitive cyber practice, we have a digital and intelligent engineering practice. And what we have seen is it's never any of those things by themselves. It's the combination of capabilities that actually get them to the answer that they want to get to. And I think that's so critical when we talk about this because, for us, we're focused on everything, right? Land, sea, air, space, cyberspace, and everywhere in between. And we do things like, through our R&D process, we've created an AI type of capability that allows people to find zero-day defects in software. That's something that actually a bunch of different capabilities came together. And then we also do things like we're working on missile defense systems and space launches and intelligence collection for the warfighter. And so all of those things, AI is a part of it, but it's never the whole solution. I just don't see that. It's the combination, how they come together, and then how you make your client successful with whatever they're trying to solve.
Okay, let's back up for a minute. We mentioned at the top there's been some change for MANTECH itself, specifically your acquisition by the Carlyle Group. I imagine that's a good thing. And what does that mean for the company? And tell us a little bit about what happened there.
Yeah, Carlyle's been a great partner. It's been interesting to see how they operate. I don't know if everyone on this call knows, but Carlyle is seen as an aerospace and defense leader within private equity. And we see that front and center. And so they really understand our industry and really understand all the management teams that are out there. So when they went through the process of purchasing us, they had done their homework, they knew the management team, and then they invested in us. And so we use a phrase that's called let MANTECH be MANTECH. And that's what they do, right? Carlyle wants us to be what they bought, right? Double down on that because they're excited about where we're going. But they also bring some things to the table that I think have been very helpful for us. And I think globally they have somewhere in the neighborhood of north of 1.1 million employees when you think about all the assets they have. And so with that global reach, you actually have a global connectivity from a technology perspective. So we can get connected into really every kind of technology, be it VC-backed, PE-backed, or commercially available because of the connectivity that they have. That's been very helpful for us in making sure that we can bring those solutions to those mission sets that we're trying to solve.
And do you find, I was just going to ask if government customers are aware of this, is that something that you can use as an advantage in selling to them?
It actually is. It's something that we've found to be very persuasive in some of our clients because they know that we're not investing in some third party in a way that has any ownership. We're bringing whatever technology is available to help answer the questions. And I do think that they also, it's also been interesting because I think also your point there, Tom, is look, what else is private equity trying to do? And what Carlyle's doing is actually bringing additional dollar investments to solve national security problems. And those are things that we're working on with them. And actually they're bringing other private equity companies in to help do that.
All right, and I want to talk about some of those customers for a moment. You've been talking about intelligent engineering, artificial intelligence, the data science that empowers all of those things, as well as cybersecurity. And we've been talking about defense and aerospace, really the defense sector, but you're not focused only on DoD agencies. And talk about how some of these priorities and these capabilities can work on the civilian side.
Yeah, so I think that's a great thing. So what we have, across our board is, a federal civilian, DoD, and intel business. And one of the things that we're trying to do is bring more of the intelligence capabilities that we have, like work across to do intel in those spaces that you just mentioned, right? Intelligent engineering, digital, cognitive cyber, and data and AI. And so we're taking the capability they have with intel to help solve some of the problems in federal civilian. And so that's been interesting to see that maturity happen for us as a business.
Yeah, any case histories you can tell us?
A couple of really good examples, right, is from a data and AI perspective, one of the things that we are doing right now is like cell-based SOC. We actually have within our intelligence group, we actually have taken cell-based SOCs that we are doing, right, the security operations centers. Mm-hmm. We're taking that capability.
SOC I get, cell-based I don't get.
Yes, so cell-based is like, think about normally you have these vertical lines that are siloed, right, in terms of how they operate. What we've done is created horizontal and matrix capability, so people have multifunctional capability that they can go do work on. But more importantly, you're getting better outcomes. So you can do this with fewer people, and you can actually resolve your security incidences much quicker. And so that's really, hopefully, a good example and a case study around that.
And maybe briefly, just we should define intelligent engineering, because engineers would say it's always been intelligent. Dummies can't engineer very well, but that has a specific meaning and application, doesn't it, nowadays?
It really does, and so for us, we think of this could be model-based system engineering, digital engineering, digital twinning, actually even application development, right? Because from an app development perspective, all the way through the things that we're doing on space launches, right? When we're actually going through, one of the things we do is work with all the new entrants within space. And so like with SpaceX, the things that we're doing is working with them on the model-based system engineering that they're creating to go do all those launches, right? That's some of the things that we play a part of on behalf of Space Force to make sure we get those outcomes that we want.
And you mentioned too application development. People have been talking about software factories for a long time now, but what they mean is just people using a certain methodology, but still hand coding and still coding. But the AI is really bringing an actual factory aspect, isn't it, to application development?
It really is, and we've seen that be very successful in several places. And one of the things for us is we actually we made a strategic decision years ago not to focus on app development because we saw AI as being the tool to actually make it happen. Mm-hmm. And so that's been something we've been working on actually for years now in terms of providing that kind of capability. But what's been interesting to see our clients learn is they'll come in and want you to take one application and refactor it, right, and make that happen quickly. But when you first get into that, you realize, actually, you know what? We would need a portfolio approach because there's all this interconnectivity between all these applications that you can save even more money, right, by doing that. And we've done something like that with DHS, and it's been exciting to see.
Yeah, with all this hyperization, hyper scaling and so on in containerizing of applications, it's not really one application. As you say, it's a portfolio. And so this seems to be like a timely way to approach this refactoring, if you will.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Tom. Yes.
Okay, and briefly, who are you? You've been with MANTECH since before Carlisle. You're still here. Tell us a little bit about Matt Tate.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'm local, right? Born and bred in the DMV area, right? I don't know how many of us are really out there, but I grew up in Centerville, Virginia. It's funny. My wife is local too. I actually delivered newspapers to her house when I was in high school.
How about that?
It's kind of funny. Still married, 35 years, plus and going. But so I went to the Naval Academy, mm-hmm. And then after that, I served for about 10 years in the Navy. I came out and decided to serve on this side of the aisle, and that's been great. And but I'm also on a board, Operation Renewed Hope Foundation. That's focused on ending veteran homelessness in the DMV area, so very big on that as well as other charities. But to get to this, like the role that I'm here in today, I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. Right? Think about George Peterson, right, who's just an icon in mm-hmm. our industry. Kevin Phillips, who's this high ethics, yep. high character, CEO who you couldn't have picked a better person to transform a founder-based company right into what we are and what we're trying to be moving forward. And then through all of that, one of the things that I've learned as a leader is, all of those things have taught me to be where I am today is, you have to go through fire to make steel, right? And that's been an interesting journey for me to be a part of.
You mentioned the idea of MANTECH and its enterprise focus when looking at federal customers, both on the civilian side and on the defense side. What does that mean precisely, and how has that benefited some of the federal agencies? Give us some examples.
So let's start with actually around our space launches. There was something called Victus Nox, which is Latin for capture the night. But what we wanted to do was actually capture time. And so what we did as part of the launches, working with a lot of other providers, we took a process that went from 90 days to get something launched to 7 days. Mm-hmm. And that 7 days includes a few days of what we call activation, the actual launch, and then 48 hours to get on orbit mission accomplishment working. And so that's, again, just a phenomenal example of, how we're taking things out of the process, where we streamlined and automated a lot of those things to make something happen and make a difference. Another good example is something that we did with the Navy on our intelligent engineering side of life, where we actually were working with a hardware provider. They had a future increment upgrade that they did not include in the pricing. Our team said, you know what, we've kind of holistically looked at this solution from an intelligent design perspective, and we want you to include that in there. And basically what ended up happening is we had a more holistic solution and saved the government 7 figures, right? The Navy 7 figures. Let me just pull on that thread a little
Sure.
bit.
Often when they do some kind of a fleet-wide or a squadron, whatever it is, wide update, they run into things nobody anticipated. And I imagine that's where the intelligent engineering can come in and say, well, you can't route that wire there because there's a bulkhead or something. I'm making that up. But that's the kind of thing you can analyze ahead of time.
That's right. And this was an aviation platform that we were working on, for the Navy, and it was exactly, certain kinds of kits that needed to be combined in certain ways, but then resilient for the future, right? Mm-hmm. And so making sure all that happened in a way that made a difference. Another example is within the DHS, at an enterprise level, we take, from an AI perspective, we take vast amounts of data and help them make some, I'll say, decisions, action-based decisions. And we've reduced their decision-making time by 30%, right, at an enterprise level. We're also doing something with Customs and Border Protection, where we have an AI and machine learning-based program where, this is helping the border, but we're doing things like, we've actually, that information's helped do things like stop terror attacks before they materialize, actually intercept drugs and illicit trade, and actually help combat human trafficking. So things that are really making a difference. And then, of course, we do a lot of things in the intel world. Mm-hmm. I'll say our unsung heroes that we can't talk about, but they're involved in a lot of cutting edge technology, cloud, quantum, AI-infused cyber. And we talked about how we're in every single national security headline, and there's also national security headlines that you'll never see, right, that they're a part of it. But in this part of our business, we're shaping the future of warfare and shaping the future of national security in really interesting ways.
Right, so there's, in all of these cases, probably the underlying value is having the right data, but also understanding the data so that you know what it is you need for the outcome that is desired.
That's a big part of the conversation, Tom. When when we as MANTECH go and we're talking to our clients, it's what are you actually trying to accomplish? Because a lot of times that's not where the conversation is. Because we're not there to sell a certain technology. We want to help them solve their problems, and that's it, right? Get that mission outcome, because we don't want it to be a fair fight, right? And that's why we want to make sure that we are leading the charge and staying ahead of those capability developments.
And is there still a desire or need or a demand on the part of agencies for just automating things that are now done by hand or that take time, kind of I hate to say lower level, but machine learning and machine automation type of applications? That's still kind of a hot market?
I believe so, yes, absolutely, Tom. There's a lot of room for AI and automation, and like we talked about, all the other capabilities that come in between when trying to solve, how do you get more efficient and effective? And that's what we've always been focused on and will continue to be focused on, right, as a provider to the federal government.
And, the overlying blanket on everything going on with government is the DOGE, if not DOGE itself, the idea of reduced workforces, reduced budgets, programs being cut, and budgets for existing programs being kind of stingier than they were. And we're looking at the 2026 requests, and there's a lot of cuts in government. So the DOGE, the efficiency, is balanced against this need to modernize, because the same people that the administration has also expressed a desire to modernize and improve service. Yeah. And so those seem to be competing objectives. How are you navigating the DOGE and efficiency idea and bringing that to the federal demand?
Right. Well, I think in two ways. I'll give you maybe an example, but look, we're being, first off, our rates very competitive, right? The way that we price things, we are extremely competitive in the market because we do want to make sure we're giving the government the best deal possible. The second thing is, let me give you an example of a deal we just won. It's with NOAA, right? So it was a $200 million, actually a security operations center deal. And this was something where, first off, our price was lower than the incumbent, but it's because we had a fundamentally different model. So when we talked about this cell-based SOC, so this work is, look, you're doing cyber defense, cyber intrusion detection, forensics, as well as threat hunting. And this is, they do work, right? Land, sea, air, space, globally.
Yep.
And so the things that we're doing.
NOAA has a Navy.
Yes, they do. Yeah, and they fly P3s, things I used to fly in the Navy, right? So, but these things are all happening to make a difference, right? In terms of operating their SOC differently. And so what we see are things like 70% reduction in security resolve time on incidents. And the way that we configure their applications, 90% reduction in false positives. I mean, these are really significantly different ways to do business that we think are right in alignment with the priorities of the administration that you're talking about.
Right, and this idea of the 70% less security resolve time, you went by that fast, but that is a crucial cybersecurity that's one of the most important pillars, in the 5 or 6 pillars, if you include automation, of cybersecurity. That's really a key point.
It really is, because the way that the cell-based SOC works, it really kind of brings together people, process, and technology, right? Those 3 pillars, and how you're going to operate differently and think differently. So in terms of going from vertical to horizontal and matrix view, it's a game changer. And
you went by another point kind of quick, that you have an ability to offer bids that are lower than incumbents and efficient bids in the first place. But that's a pretty important point, because this generation of buyers, of contracting officers, and empowered by the DOGE and kind of encouraged by the DOGE, is looking at contractor costs. And some of the big contractors have been saying, well, you can get 5 or 6 or 7% out of this type of thing. It's very explicit what they want, so it's not so easy to play in that market.
Yeah, the thing that we focus on is what is the mission outcome that we're trying to achieve here? And then, because of all the capability that we've talked about around digital, cyber, data and AI, and intelligent engineering, how do we bring all those together to think differently on how to operate things? And so we're taking a white, kind of a blank sheet when we look at these solutions, and how you can re-architect them a different way, and then still get a better outcome at a lower cost point. And so that's something we are extremely focused on across the business.
And so it's, I guess, important to find ways to have a lower labor input, but that doesn't mean using cheaper people.
Yes, it might be
two different things.
Well, yeah, or it might be fewer people that
right.
are more technically advanced, right, but still get you that outcome at a different, lower price point.
And you find people are looking at that kind of thing from the government standpoint?
We do, right? But it's a mix, because I still think there are what we'll call best value. I'm seeing not a lot of low price technically acceptable. We're seeing look, what do you think is it really going to cost? But if you have a different model, that could still be at a good price, right? But just but done in a way that's different. So it's if you change the model, look, the old way people used to think about how do you do rates times hours times people, that's not really going to get us as a country to the goal line, right? And so we're very focused on making this shift.
And I guess allied with that, or alongside that, I should say, is the renewed, refreshed drive of something that's always been part of government contracting for at least 50 years, but now it's being reemphasized, and that is bringing commercial solutions to even national security level problems. I mean, the DoD itself talks about that. They want to be the best player of the violin, but it's the same violin anybody else might have. So talk about the notion of the commercial technologies and open source types of things being used in a right way that can help national security and other federal missions.
Yes, well, let me give you, I think, a good example of that as a contract that we have called ICON. It's an interagency intelligence and computer operations network program. So this is full spectrum cyber, offensive and defensive, cross intel and defense. And its intention is to bring commercial capability actually to bear, as well as academia and research institutes. We have 70 plus companies already that are a part of this, but this is something where we are able to bring whatever kind of capability that the client needs to go solve those tough problems from a cyber perspective. So a very good example of something recent, this was within less than the last year when we won this. But that's exactly what that construct is to take all that commercial capability and then use it for good.
And that brings to mind the question of your own subs and your own suppliers, your supply chain. Mm-hmm. You must be looking in the commercial world, along with everybody else. And so, how do you find that next commercial capability or non-federally developed or non-DoD developed capability that you can bring, to that unfair fight?
Yeah. So, within our own organization, we actually have what we call the Innovation and Capability Office. And within that, we actually have a cell that just focuses on researching and bringing in new technology to help solve problems. And then we also couple that with what Carlisle has at a global level in terms of other commercial capability that might be of interest to us, and bring that in, and we'll research it and make sure that it can actually go solve those problems. And this is where our R&D spending comes in, right? So we actually do a lot of R&D spending to go create this kind of new, interesting, cutting tech. And this is where, when I mentioned about how we created an AI-based capability that can find zero-day defects, right? This was in this part of our organization where that happened.
I mean, many years ago we had, what they called systems integration and systems integrators. In some ways, this is a contemporary version in the AI and data-based world and digital world of systems integration, only in a different set of vocabularies and a different set of technologies.
It is. I do think that people need to be thinking differently than how they operated in the past to get the success we need for the future, right? And I think that's important when we kind of talk about the model. But I agree with you 100% there, Tom.
All right. Well, it's been good having you.
Tom, it's been a pleasure, right? We're so happy to be a part of this, and from a MANTECH perspective, we are going to continue to keep country first, right? We're going to protect our democratic values, keep our country safe and strong, and do everything we can to continue to make a difference.
All right, Matt Tate is the CEO of MANTECH. I'm Tom Temin, and for more on this discussion, please visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search MANTECH.